since I got my internet turned back on. Oh, yeah, I've been catching up on my shows. And
Nice.
yes, it's nice to finally see some kindred spirits. And I watched this one episode, which was so good. It was a recent one. It was Gettysburg. Did you see this one yet?
No, no. I've seen like one.
So basically, I was going to tell you in that episode, they bring in what is her name? Dana and her husband. I can't remember his name. Greg? I think it's Greg.
Whoa,
The
wait a minute. I don't think I knew they were married.
Oh yeah.
The one that do the traveling,
Yes, the occult museum or whatever.
yeah. I didn't know they were married.
I'm pretty sure. Otherwise, I'm just spreading nasty rumors about these.
Well, they just look so great together.
They're very comfortable and they are very intelligent and they just have like this superb paranormal knowledge. Like they just like, oh yeah, and blah 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 blah. It's almost like talking to an encyclopedia. I mean, I wouldn't know. I didn't talk to them, but when I hear them talking, that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I get what you're saying though. They just spout shit off the top of their heads like they know
Oh my God.
everything, and they are so relaxed and cool about it. Like, oh yeah, that's, so and so, blah blah blah. It's like, what?
Oh yeah, they just know it so well that they don't stutter over their words. They just, here it is, lay it out for you. So if you haven't seen that episode, I highly recommend it because it's Gettysburg, which is one of your favorite places anyways.
Yeah, I've talked about that on the show before, haven't I? When Ghost Adventures was there.
I don't.
Yeah.
We talk so much about Ghost Adventures and Gettysburg and Lincoln that sometimes it all just kind of blends into one text message that we've had, and I don't know.
I do love some Abe Lincoln, but yeah, Gettysburg seems to never disappoint anyone.
Yeah.
If you're looking for paranormal activity and connecting with the other side. So I definitely have to check that episode out.
You'll like the Gettysburg one. Like I was saying, they brought in the paranormal occult chicken dude, and they come in, they do a wild scrying deal. Oh,
Oh,
yeah. And
yeah.
at the end, Amy and Adam basically convince the people there at Gettysburg that they have to get rid of something that's causing all of this, I guess, chaos. So they go ahead and get rid of it. But the whole time I'm sitting there wondering, well, they just had Dana and Greg there who are haunted object collectors. So I wonder if this was sort of like a handshake between Adam and Amy and the haunted collectors.
This is how they find
Yeah.
their stuff.
They're like, hey, you guys come
They're
in.
like, I really want that.
Exactly.
We'll tell them to get rid of it.
Right. That's like the whole time, that's the whole thing that's going on inside my head. I'm like, who is taking it? And I watch at the very end, you see them loading it into a vehicle. They've blanked out the license plate, so you can't see who's taking it away. You can't see who's in the vehicle. I'm like,
Who's it
it's
going
gotta
to?
be them.
It's gotta be them. It's a conspiracy. Or it,
Right?
yeah.
So it was removed to an undisclosed location. And I'm like, yeah, until I see it again on Instagram.
There'll be a little waiting period. They'll hope everybody forgets, and then they'll be
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh, look at what we got."
That's so what I'm thinking. So anyways, that's my haunted bit for the day or for the
That's
week.
hilarious. Well, the world ended this week, and it snowed yet again in fucking Arizona.
I can't believe that.
Southern Arizona, I should say. Not Flagstaff. It's not the Grand Canyon.
Right.
This is not Northern Arizona. I'm in Southern Arizona, and there were blankets of white stuff on the ground, and everyone was freaking the fuck out.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was just talking to my husband about that today. And, we're driving past mountains of snow because I'm in New England and I'm used to it. We see it all the time. We have big plows. I have one parked right next door to me all over the place that are ready to handle the next snowstorm. How many plows do you have in Arizona that you see when you have a snowstorm?
We shoveled out our driveway with a piece of plywood. We have all this extra wood, like scrap wood all the time because I always think I'm going to build something with it. And yeah, that's what we scraped our driveway with because somebody pulled into the driveway, went into the house, came back out to shovel the driveway, and their vehicle had slid out of the driveway.
Whoa, really?
Whoa, really is right. We have a pretty steep-ish driveway. It's very short though, and thank God it just rolled like to the street, but not like in the street.
Wow.
It was insane.
That is insane.
But I might be coffee and dry throat and stuff like that because the weather just keeps going back and forth around here, which is so super fucking lame.
I mean, it's winter, and that's not, I don't know what my excuse is. I just came down with a super bad cold, so I'm still nasally too. So everybody that gets to hear us for this podcast, they get the sick versions and the nasally versions of Chris and Wendy to this time. Sorry, guys. The show must go on, right?
Yeah, because this is a show.
Yeah.
This is a podcast show.
It's a paranormal podcast show because I'm Chris.
And I'm Wendy.
And this is Creatures in the Night.
Yes. So should I tell you a story now, or
might as well
talk about the weather some more?
Is it paranormal weather? I guess it is kind of paranormal, right? It's not like you get snow.
Fucking strange, and I would say unexplainable, but I bet you there's some meteorologists out there that know what's going on. So I think it can be explained. But it's definitely fucking weird that the desert is freezing over so much.
I agree. It is fucking weird. But yeah, why don't you tell me a story?
I'll tell you a story. That'll be better. So you know that I've said it before on the podcast, that I am an old lady and I like to listen to audiobooks. I have a long drive, or I do a lot of driving for work. So the audiobooks help make my little road trips more entertaining instead of getting annoyed and getting some road rage. You know, I can just be like, sweet, there's traffic. That's more time with my stories.
Right.
I don't mind it so much, especially when you get into a good book.
Yes.
I feel like when I tell people I'm listening, I didn't call you back because I was listening to my audiobook. They look at me kind of like, what a fucking nerd. And I'm like, you don't get it. It's just like watching TV, but with your mind.
Right.
Which I'm very good at because I have a wild imagination.
Have you had to use that excuse on many people? Like, sorry, guy, listening to my Salem's Lot book.
I usually don't like to admit it to people, but that's why I didn't call them or answer their phone call. But sometimes with my family, I'm just like, look, I'm busy.
Right.
I'm very busy with my story. They get it. But yes, like you said just a second ago, you let my book title out.
Oh.
No, you're fine. It's not like a surprise. I read a book. Here's the title. But after all the Stephen King talk on this podcast, I have read/listened to my very first Stephen King book. Because
oh, wow. This is your first
even though I've seen the movies, I've never actually listened to any of his books before.
Ooh.
So I use a free app because I'm cheap, and it's through the library. So if anybody else is cheap, and I kind of do want to get one of those paid apps where you pay a little membership and stuff, though, because the library apps are super awesome, and I would definitely tell people to get into it if you enjoy reading, and reading is fundamental. It's very important, especially for kids that can't make their mind up.
Yeah.
Get them a library card. Get these free library apps that they have for libraries all over the country, and you can download ebooks and you can download audiobooks, and it's definitely really cool.
Look at you advocating for the library services. What an awesome thing.
I really am. But also those kind of paid apps out there, you can get whatever you want. With the local library, you get whatever is in
right.
their inventory, and their inventory is limited too. So it's not going to have every type of weirdo book I'm looking for. And it also, they make you they have holds on audiobooks. They're too many people have this audiobook out, so you can't have it. And I'm like, it's fucking digital. How do you not have unlimited amounts of this? Just copy it again, motherfucker. What are you doing? I don't understand the technology of what's going on, but every time I go to look for a book, they're like, that's already got 68 people that are interested in it. You're on the wait list.
Damn. Well, look, when you said they got holds on stuff, I thought they were like, no, you've read way too many books about murder. We've got to keep you from, find something happy. Let's do something else.
No, they'll let you download any dark shit they actually have in their inventory. It's just that they only have 8 copies, and so you have to wait. And I don't
That's so
understand how you
weird.
have 8 digital copies, but whatever. So
Also, how long do you have to wait? People listen to these like while they're driving to work. It shouldn't take but like a couple of days, right? People just actually hang on to them for months.
no, they only give them to you. Well, they give them to you for 21 days.
Oh, wow. That is a long
And
rental.
maybe that's just a random number that I threw out, but it is like 20 something days. That's all you get on the book. So when I was doing like my Game of Thrones books and they're
Mm,
1,000 fucking pages long
yeah.
or whatever, I mean, I was not finishing them before they had to go back and
Oh,
then had to go back on the wait list to get them. So this is where if you paid for one of those paid membership apps for audiobooks and ebooks, then you wouldn't have this problem. So I really think I want to get into that because I really do enjoy downloading audiobooks and I'm getting tired of having to wait for my shit. Like I'm waiting right now. I have no book because
no.
I'm on hold. But never mind my cheap ass library frustrations.
Your soapbox.
Yeah. So I put a whole bunch of Stephen King novels on hold. Even the Salem Lot one had to go on hold, but it was the first one to become available.
Wow.
And so I don't know if you know what Salem's Lot is about, but I didn't. I didn't even know
Okay.
what it was about. I knew it was a movie,
Yeah.
so I was like, I'll pick this one. You know, along with the other titles that I was picking, I was like, that's a movie, I
Yeah.
think. It should be good then. So I put it on
Uh-huh.
hold. I didn't have any clue what it was about. So when the audiobook starts, it includes an intro from none other than the king of horror himself, Stephen King. And he's all like, this is my book, and this is why I decided to write on it. So he basically gave the entire premise of the book away. And I was like, yeah, okay. So a part of me is like, surprised, and I was so excited and a little bit like annoyed. I was like, you just fucking gave away like the mystery of the book. But I guess it's my fault for being 50 years later or something, just because this book came out in the 1970s or whatever. I think it would have been really nice to have discovered what was going on in the book as I listened to it. But again, like I said, I was super surprised about the idea of the book because I thought, how fucking perfect is this? That my first Stephen King novel is about motherfucking vampires.
Okay, for anyone who's just listening to this is your very first podcast and you've never heard, aside from loving Abe Lincoln, aside from loving the paranormal, she fucking loves vampires and murder stuff too. That's
maybe
like
I'm a million years old, and that's why maybe I'm a vampire.
But I'm so glad that you are doing the story because when I found out that your birthday was going to be on the same week that I was doing that story, I'm like, damn, I really wish I had a vampire story to do for her.
And this is why when you asked me, you asked me whose podcast is coming out the week of my birthday.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was you'll do it before and I'm doing it after. That's where I got it in my head. Oh my God, she's going to do it on vampires. I don't know why, but I was like,
that makes so much sense.
She knows how much I love vampires. She's going to do my story.
And then I sent you that text about like vervain and verbena, how that's like a vampire's most hated herb.
Yes.
I was like,
yes, you did that. And I was like, oh, all of that. I was just like, she's got my damn story.
That's so funny.
But we didn't. So that's good. And if you got a backup vampire story, I'm sorry. Rip that shit up.
It's in my pocket for a rainy day.
Hey, you never know. Vampires have a long ass history. You could probably tell me something that is not in this story. But yes, if you couldn't catch on from all the babble we were just doing right there, it was just my birthday last weekend. So I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. And I'm going to do a damn story on motherfucking vampires.
Sweet.
So obviously, this is not going to be the episode where we provide proof that vampires actually exist or even tell you hardcore reasons why you should be always looking over your shoulder for some pale-faced people that might get you at your neck. That's not going to happen in this podcast episode. But you cannot deny that the legend of the vampire has not made a huge impression on the world and deserves some attention from a paranormal podcast. So, tales of supernatural beings consuming the blood of flesh and the living have been found in nearly every culture around the world for many, many fucking centuries. However, the official term vampire did not exist in ancient times so much. blood drinking and other vampire-like activities were mostly seen as some kind of demon or even a witch. They were quicker to bring up the witch word before they were a vampire.
Yeah, sure, of course. I get that.
Always blaming them on shit.
I know.
Some of the earliest stories of creatures like this would say not only did they drink blood, but they also ate flesh. Even the devil was considered synonymous with vampire-like activities.
Mm-hmm.
The Persians of Mesopotamia were one of the first civilizations thought to have tales of such creatures. Historians have found images painted on pottery of blood-drinking creatures attacking the men.
Oh, can I please find one of those pieces of pottery at the fucking thrift store? That would be epic.
Well, they technically said shards of pottery, so I don't think that they have too many things in whole. You can glue them back together and make something with it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, ancient Babylonians had tales of the mythical Lali-Tu, or Lil. She goes by different names in different areas during different periods of time. But her kind of mythical demon self existed in different societies, I guess you would say, for a long period of time. Her and her daughters are considered most prominent in Hebrew demonology.
Beautiful.
Lil was considered a demon believed to mostly feed on the blood of babies.
Ooh. Baby's blood tastes the best? What?
It's the freshest.
I guess so.
To keep her alive the longest.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So ancient Greek mythology contains several precursors to the modern idea of vampires, though most of their beings were living, not seen as like undead, like how we would recognize vampires today. However, they were beings that feasted on blood. In India, they had tales of Venlas? Yeah, it's Vetals. You know I always have to do stories on shit I can't pronounce. This creature is a ghoul-like being that inhabits corpses. It just finds corpses and works its way into their bodies, you know? So it's kind of like a floating around demon soul.
Whoa. And like zombifies them or what?
Yeah, basically takes over these dead bodies. It doesn't really change the way they look or anything. They still look shitty and like dead bodies. But it's like going and wreaking havoc. But it also, this is funny, in India, this is the only place that you saw it so early before it was kind of fictionalized. But these type creatures that inhabited corpses would hang like bats in trees in cemeteries.
Wait, this is the guy who's inhabiting the dead body.
Yep.
Right?
And then once they're done doing their business, bothering the town, they go back to the cemetery, but they choose to hang upside down in a tree instead of like lay down on the ground or something.
They're just like sloths. They just got to get up in that tree and hang upside down. So do they sleep? Do they disappear? Do they turn back into a corpse and then it's just a dead body hanging from a tree?
I don't, this is as much as I got for you. But
that's really interesting.
Yeah, the hanging upside down thing, I was like, what is the benefit of hanging upside down? Why are they doing that? Like, you would assume they're dead, so they probably have very poor circulation. So I wonder if that helps flow the blood through their body.
Do you think that they grew really long? Because you know, when you die, your toenails and fingernails continue to grow.
Oh, yeah.
So when they climbed up that tree, I assume they did it just like beasts. They just climbed in with their claws. Did they get up there to one of the branches and just like latch on with their...
hang their toenails on there?
Yeah, their toenails? Or did they, lazily just bend their legs over it?
Just like a silly gymnast or something. No,
Right,
we're going to go with they put their toenails into the tree. I like that vision.
Yeah, it's creepier.
So in Africa, in the Eastern Cape region, they had stories of monsters that can take the form of large birds and can summon thunder and lightning.
Oh, yeah. That was a legend that Josh Gates hunted down in Destination Truth.
Yeah. Some of these, I think there's another one in here too that is something that he kind of touched on before. But the people of Madagascar tell of the Ramal? We're just going to say them really fast. Which is a living vampire who drank on the blood of humans and prepare yourself for this. They would also eat the nail clippings of nobles. Only nobles, not peasants. That's gross.
That's good. Well, I'm sure noble people kept their nail
Yeah,
clippings much cleaner than
exactly.
peasants would.
They have nails.
Still, that's grody.
That is
It's disgusting.
grody. That's disgusting.
I can't believe when you were telling me this was drinking the blood of and eating fingernail clippings, that the thing that I was grossed out by was the fact that it was eating fingernail clippings.
No,
Don't care that it was drinking the blood.
that's all I was thinking. I was like, what? You've taken a step too far.
That's too far, sir. No.
I'm totally with you. But okay, many myths surrounding vampires originate during the medieval period. The 12th century English historian and chronicler, that's a word. I might not be
All right.
just right, but he chronicles shit, you know, so he's a chronicler.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
Sure.
Walter Map and William of Newburgh reported accounts of rivets.
Okay.
It's a term that basically meant it was a visible ghost
Ooh.
or animated corpse.
Oh.
So like a zombie, like what they were talking about before, that other thing that inhabited corpses.
Okay.
And that it was believed to have been revived from death and it comes back to haunt the living.
Cool.
This was not a popular belief in 12th century England, but it didn't stop William from writing stories of supposed revents.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, whatever. He believed that they were so common that if he were to write down all the experiences others had had with these creatures, the undertaking would be beyond measure and would be troublesome to everyone.
I bet. Yeah, that might be some. That might give me nightmares.
Yeah, he knew this shit would blow their mind.
Yeah.
He understood that what he was saying was super hard to believe. However, he still maintained that he had knowledge of frequent examples of this occurring, so much so that he would fucking state it as fact that these things existed. He was so hardcore about it.
Was this like, when you knew that guy in high school who had like proof of Bigfoot? He's like, I've got this amazing picture. Was he one of those guys, you think?
No, I almost think William is more like us. He's like, we've experienced this shit. We saw it happen.
Yeah.
So this shit is true. Whether you want to believe it or not, this shit is true. I saw it happen. Let me tell you a story about what happened. But if they don't see it with their own eyes, nobody believes them.
Sure. We've definitely lived through those stories plenty of times.
Exactly. So he was a 12th century paranormal investigator, basically, struggling to get people to believe him and not look at him like, that is a weird motherfucker. He's always talking about ghosts and monsters. So one story that William tells, involves a man of evil conduct, is the way he described it. Basically, he was a bad dude.
Yeah.
He was so bad that wherever he originally came from, he had to like run away and then go hide and live in York. And he married a woman there, and he was trying to like get on with his life. However, his wife, he thought something was up with her, that she wasn't being faithful to him. So he hid in the rafters of their bedroom, and then he caught her in the act of infidelity.
So wait, did they live in a barn? Like, who's got rafters in their bedroom?
I don't know. I thought this was, how did nobody notice this man like hanging up on beams on the bed?
It must have been really high up for them to have not seen him.
How did he get up there? I mean,
right?
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Was he already a monster? This seems kind of.
Oh.
He's climbing on the walls with his long nails.
Yeah.
But he didn't have a good hold up there, though, so he fucking fell.
He did.
He fell, and this is how he died. So,
oh, shit.
Yeah. So, like, he catches his wife in the act, and
man.
then he falls from the rafter. He's fatally wounded, and then 3 days later, he dies from his wounds and his injuries. They bury him, proper burial, nothing funny with that, but it didn't stop him from coming back from the dead, apparently.
Whoa.
So at nighttime, he rose from his grave and he wandered the courtyard of the village and around some of the houses in the village.
This is the same guy that believed in the paranormal?
No.
Oh, okay. It's like, damn, that sucks.
This is one of the stories that the guy, William Newburgh, I think. William of Newburgh. This is one of the stories he wrote about. So he's not a zombie or a vampire. He's writing about them, that he witnessed it. So from his grave, the guy that died, the bad guy that lives in New York, from his grave at night, he rose and he wandered the town and around the houses in the village. A number of townspeople were killed during this time after his death and his supposed rising from the dead and wandering around. The townspeople were pretty fucking upset about it.
I bet they were relatively annoyed by the shit.
Exactly. They're like, what the fuck? Again, I hear that dude outside. And then Miss Rosetta just died down the street last night. I bet that they're connected. So they were getting pissed.
Yeah, they should have went and put some fucking cement on top of this man's grave, because that would stop him from getting up and walking around, right?
Right, unless he's hanging in the trees.
Oh.
But I think that's only in Africa or wherever that was. I can't remember which country it was now. But the townspeople dug up the man's grave. They removed his body. They burnt it, but not after removing his heart.
Oh, yeah.
Smashing it with like a shovel or something. And then they threw the heart in the fire as well.
Oh, interesting. They didn't like drink the blood from the heart or something too. I mean, I figured there was some other dark ritual here.
They just wanted to make sure they really got that fucking heart. Right. And then they just burnt it off to clean it up.
Okay, good.
So another story that William of Newburgh tells is of a woman whose husband recently died. However, the husband returns from the dead and visits her at night in her bedchamber for, some business.
Yep.
So, because she complained about him just coming in and climbing on top of her, and that she felt like it was a lot of dead weight. That's the way it was explained.
Yeah, I bet.
Waking me up from his sleep, and he's not doing that much, I don't know.
Just laying there.
Making me do all the work. No, I don't know. This happened for 3 nights. And then the creature starts repeating these nocturnal visits with family members and neighbors. And I don't know if the same kind of activities were happening.
Oh, okay.
He just basically starts visiting other family members and neighbors, and everybody sees this as like a serious nuisance in town.
I love that that's what they're calling it. We've got to stop this nuisance.
Exactly. Isn't it so funny? They're like, this is so annoying.
Right.
I thought we were rid of him. Eventually, he even comes out in broad daylight.
Oh, my God.
So he's not just coming out at night.
Yeah.
He's starting to, like, wreak havoc during the day, too. So the local bishop wrote a letter of absolution. Okay. I don't really know what that means, but he wrote a letter. They go and they open up the man's tomb, the dead man's tomb, and they witness his body is in his tomb. So they put the letter on his chest, and then they seal up the tomb where they think he can't get out again. And I guess that worked.
Okay. I was thinking that had something to do with like absolving him of his sins or something. So maybe if he wrote that letter of absolution and put that in there with the body, that he could be at peace, maybe?
Whatever it was, it fucking worked.
It worked,
so,
huh?
They didn't complain about him anymore. So
did they also like drive a stake through his heart too while they were like, and here's that letter?
They didn't say that's how they pinned the letter to his chest. But maybe they just left that detailed out. Be like, yeah, we stabbed that motherfucker.
Yeah, we took care of that problem. It's done.
So that chronicler, William Mapp, he told a story of a wicked man. All these people seem like they maybe were troublesome in their past. And then now they've, are still troublesome in death.
Yeah.
But this dude that wasn't a very nice dude, after he died, he rose from the dead. He wandered the streets of the village. This one just went through town calling out people's names. And then so he's just like out there screaming names, kind of like when your cat's in the living room while you're trying to go to sleep and just meowing.
Just thinking about that.
So he's just yelling out names in the middle of town. But about 3 days after he did this and he would call your name out, you would be dead.
Oh, not good.
And you keep seeing the pattern of the 3. I saw that a lot too.
Yeah.
Like they're rising after 3 days. After 3 days, you're dying. It's very strange.
That's almost like the story to The Ring.
In response to that, they call in a different bishop, Gilbert Foley. He dug up the body. They cut the fucking head off. They weren't even playing around. They cut the head off with a spade. They sprinkled some holy water on that shit, and then they sealed it back up.
That would definitely stop him from yelling out people's names.
Right? It totally worked.
It's gone.
He stopped bothering people. Everybody was safe.
Huh.
So vampire-like beings were rarely written about in the Jewish literature, but in the 16th century, a rabbi who's got a long name that I'm going to mess up. I did try to sound it out. It's David Ben Salem Abzinger.
All right.
He wrote that an uncharitable old woman whose body was unguarded and unburied for 3 days after she died, she rose from her death as a vampire entity, and she killed hundreds of people.
You know, I'm starting to think I should change my lucky number.
The rabbi linked this event to the lack of the body being unguarded after death. He said that corpses are vessels for evil spirits. So they're supposed to be watched over after death, and she wasn't, and that's what caused this. And they never really said how they rectified it. So that's the end of that story.
I'm sure they opened her coffin back up and they cut something off.
They did, and they just didn't want to include that. They were like, it's handled though. Don't worry about it.
Everything's good here, guys.
The idea of a proper vampire that we associate with today really originated from folklore from Eastern Europe in the late 17th and 18th century. These tales formed the basis of the vampire legend that later entered Germany and England, where they would become more popular kinds of horror stories and like how we see vampires today, like I said.
Like beautiful people.
Yeah, like very elegant and well-spoken, and they can talk you into shit instead of just like wandering the middle of the village yelling out people's names.
Screaming at people.
That sounds like
hanging from their toenails.
They got glorified and beautified, I guess you would say.
Right. Now they twinkle in the sunlight.
Oh, gosh. One of the earliest recordings of vampire activity came from the region of Israel. In modern Croatia, local reports cited the local vampire, Jor Grando, of the village of Crane, was the cause of panic among the villagers. A former peasant, George, died in 1656. Local villagers claimed he returned from the dead and began drinking blood from people and sexually harassing his widow.
Man.
I said he keeps it to his wife, though.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
So, though apparently she didn't like it if she called it sexual harassment. But
what do you say? You call the cops and you're like, yeah, my dead husband is sexually harassing me. He's definitely dead, and I don't want to have anything to do with this shit anymore. I mean, like, how do you...
She's trying to move on with her life because she knows she can't be with a dead guy, and he's fucking this up. So the village leader ordered a stake to be driven through his heart, but when the method failed to kill him, they went back and then beheaded him.
Wow.
And that seemed to work because the activity ended.
Okay.
During the 18th century, there was a frenzy of vampire sightings in Eastern Europe, with frequent stakings and grave diggings, like digging people's graves up, to identify and kill potential vampires.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Because they either didn't decompose in a specific way, so they still looked fresh, and well, they have to be vampires, right? So those are the ones that get stake driven through or the head lopped off.
Well, I think these stories circulated, and then people were like, that guy was a little shady. I'm scared that he might come back a little shady. So let's go to... Yeah. So it doesn't even have to be that they dug them up and they're like, that's weird. They still look pretty fresh and whatnot. They were just like, nah, I don't trust that guy. So we better go make sure he's really dead.
So far from all the stories you told me, it seemed like it was all the shady guys coming back and doing creepy things anyway. So yeah, right? It gives them a reason to want to say, yep, we're going to go ahead and just do that whole head lopping off thing with this guy, just to be on the safe side.
But they would bury him first, and then they'd be like, we should go back and take care of that. So, even the government officials engaged in hunting and staking of vampires.
Wow.
Despite being called the Age of Enlightenment, during which most folklore legends had been put to end, people were like not believing them anymore. You know, things were evolving, and they were like, that's silly. Nope. The belief in vampires increased dramatically during this time,
Wow.
resulting in mass hysteria throughout most of Europe. The panic began with an outbreak of alleged vampire attacks in East Persia in 1721, then just spread to all other areas. It just got crazy. There were two famous cases of vampires. The first to be officially recorded, like by government officials, involved the corpse of Peter Blagojevich and Arnold Palo from Serbia. Blagojevich, you might have heard this one.
Okay.
I think that this was the other one that was on Destination Truth. Blagojevich was reported to have died at the age of 62, but allegedly returned after his death, asking his son for food, which makes you start to wonder, was he prematurely buried? Maybe that's the first thing he asked for, is he showed up and he was like, knock, 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 I'm really hungry. I just had to dig my way out. But we don't know that for sure. So his son refused because he's like freaked out. And then later, the son was found dead.
Whoa.
Blagojevich supposedly returned and started bothering the neighbors. And then when they wouldn't help him, they were found dead. They noted that they had died from a loss of blood.
Mm-hmm. All of them? The son too?
No, they didn't necessarily say that's how the son died. They just said the
neighbors
that he harassed, and they turned him away. That's how they were found dead.
Seemed to be lacking a large amount of blood. Okay. That's weird.
Usually not good. The second case that was so famous, that Arnold guy, so Arnold Palo, he was an ex-soldier. He returned after his service in the military to a farming town and settled down as a farmer. However, a lot of people around town, including the woman that he ended up marrying while he was there, noted that there was something off about Palo.
Oh.
He just never seemed quite happy. And then he started telling people, look, when I was off in the military, I was attacked by a vampire. Oh. It happened years ago. It was horrible. He just couldn't get the fuck over it. He told people, I was attacked by a vampire. Palo died while collecting hay, like on a hay cart. He fell off and broke his neck.
Damn.
After he died, people began to die in the surrounding area. It was widely believed that Palo had returned to prey on neighbors, that he had himself turned into a vampire.
Yeah, he was talking about it forever. He was visited by a vampire. He was attacked, and now he's dead. So, yeah, I could see where people would start to put two and two together.
There's that suspicion. Somebody dies, and you start thinking about what kind of life they led or things they said, and you're like, just to be on the safe side. So the two instances were well documented, like I said, by government officials. They had examined the bodies. They wrote case reports. They published books that went throughout Europe. Even a doctor documented that they opened the grave of Palo and they put a stake through his heart, and they wrote that he screamed.
Wow.
That the body, the corpse, made a horrible screaming sound and that blood gushed out of his body. And this was like a while after his death.
Right. Things like, screaming shouldn't happen to a dead man.
No. That I'm pretty sure, you get the blood and they're going to bloat and stuff like that. That can still happen. But I don't know if they should still make sounds.
Do you remember Princess Bride, right?
Yes,
you saw that movie?
Yes.
Yes. And he's laying there. Yeah, and he squeezed him and he said, true love. And he goes, no. He absolutely said to blave. That means to bluff. That's what that just reminded me of when he screamed. Ah!
Such a good movie. This was kind of the beginning of that hysteria. And it was commonly referred to as the 18th century vampire controversy. It raged for a generation. And just FYI, because I looked it up, a generation is considered between 22 and 33 fucking years.
Wow, that did last a long time.
Yeah, it's supposed to, I think it's like based off of kind of like how old you would be when you have like a child. So like this is your generation, then you're going to make another generation of people.
Okay.
So in Greece during the 18th and 19th centuries, bodies were often exhumed from their graves after 3 years. A priest would pour wine over the body and read scripture.
Oh, I like that.
I know. And that was for like all the good people. He was just
Oh,
like, we bothered you. Here's some wine. Here's some good
yeah.
words. We're going to put you back where you were. However,
Sweet.
if they had not sufficiently decayed in their opinions, they would treat
Hmm.
them like vampires. And that didn't get the same kind of treatment.
They didn't get the wine and the blessing and all of that good
They
stuff.
probably got some scripture thrown at them, but
Screamed at them while they were
stake
like,
to the
chopping
heart,
things off.
chop their
Right.
head off. In Hungary, the belief in vampires has existed since the Middle Ages.
Oh, yeah.
In the 12th century, officials interrogated a local shaman to gain information about a blood-drinking demon that the shaman had, told some people about. And so that's where the government was like, tell us more. We must know.
Yeah, right.
So he claimed that this demon had existed from or since 895.
Oh my God.
And that feels weird just even saying that, 895.
I mean, you don't think of that as a year.
No, it's not 4 numbers. You're like, what? I do not understand.
Wow.
So they've been around for a long time up in Hungary, just so you know.
Yes.
At least this demon
Mhm.
has. In Romania, vampires were known as moroi, which means dead, or in Slavic means nightmare, which
Oh.
I find very fucking fitting.
Interesting.
Yeah. They also use the term strago. They were said, these Moirois and stragos were said to have the ability to send out their souls at night to meet with others like them and to feed off the blood of livestock and neighbors. They use the word neighbors a lot in these descriptions instead of like people. They're specifically going after their neighbors.
Well, I think back then, I mean, these are relatively small towns, so they're on a first name basis with probably everybody in the community, right? So they're all like their neighbors. They wouldn't just be like some people a couple blocks down. They knew those people, and there's no blocks. It's just like a dirt road.
But it's funny that they kept it local too, though. I didn't think that the book Salem's Lot really referenced too much of this. It followed very along with like Dracula's views, which is what Stephen King said in the beginning, that he read Dracula as a kid, and then when he was a teacher for a short amount of time, he had his class read it, and that reread of it really inspired him to write Salem's Lot, which Dracula, if you've never read it, don't just watch the movie, read the fucking book. It really is fucking cool. You get so much more out of the book than you did out of the movies, and the characters and their, just backstories and their personalities. And so I really, really like it. And what I'm reading about these encounters that people truly had or claim to truly have, they don't necessarily connect with that, except for the fact in Salem's Lot, the vampires there were keeping it local. I mean, they were going to eat up this whole town, and they wouldn't go outside of the town. Like Billy Ray that lives over in the next town but works in Salem Lot. Oh, they're not messing with him. Let him go home. He's fine. They only want to eat all the residents of Salem Lot. So that's kind of funny. I just kind of actually connected that, as they keep saying neighbors and neighbors and neighbors. So like vampires are all about just like, I'm just going to consume this one town and then I'll move on.
They always say eat local.
Right.
So.
They're big fans of that. Supporting their local community. I get it.
Right?
Oh, get this. It was believed that, this is funny, and this was not just in the Romanian culture. I saw this in multiple cultures. I just decided to put it all together in this one spot. So how we were talking about like a lot of these guys that are gals, it was mostly guys so far though, that have come back from the dead and wreaked havoc on the towns, that they seemed like kind of some bad dudes in real life.
Yeah.
So whatever about that. Maybe that is a thing. Maybe it isn't. But people started making like list of things that if you had this and you had that, you could potentially be a vampire when you die or whatever.
Damn. Those are some cool neighbors.
So get some of this shit. So they believed that people that were born with an extra nipple, a tail.
Well, come on. Yeah.
I mean, extra hair.
What?
They were all doomed to become vampires.
That's not fair. Extra hair.
I don't even know that, like, you're just really hairy, like I have hairy arms or hairy belly or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, what about the people that just shaved that extra hair off and you never knew anything about it?
It would be sneaky. They are vampires. Also, if you were the seventh child of a family, but you had to be the seventh child and also of a different sex. So, like, if your parents had 6 girls and then finally they had a boy and that was the seventh child, that child was going to be a vampire.
Oh.
And then vice versa if they had 6 boys, and you know what I mean.
Some people are just really trying for that one sex, they just really want a boy, like you said, and it took them 7 times to get there.
I know. And then now they're cursed.
That
So,
sucks.
like, maybe they should have stopped.
Well, yeah.
Also, if you were born early, if your mom didn't eat salt when she was pregnant with you, if she had you out of wedlock.
How is that your fault? How are any of these things your fault?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't
Wow.
matter. You could be a vampire. It's all your mom's fault in that case.
This sounds like a lead up to like a Jeff Foxworthy joke.
There's a couple more. If you were born with blue eyes and red hair.
Oh, I agree with that one.
I mean, yeah, I was kind of like, oh no, those people are vampires.
I'm on board.
Shouldn't they have green eyes or brown eyes if they have red hair? No?
I mean, genetics are funny how they do that sort of thing. I don't know.
I don't know. That's normal. Anyways, this is the best one. And it comes from southern Russia. People who were known to talk to themselves were believed to be at risk of becoming a vampire.
Well, I was screwed on that one for sure. I talk to myself all the time. That is,
yeah.
They just didn't like certain things that other people did, and they're just like writing that shit in stone.
They were like, that fucker's weird. They're going to be a vampire.
Yeah.
When they die, we should put a stake through their heart. I mean, that was just like that last stab on somebody you didn't like.
Right. It's like, why didn't they put down, if they don't eat cheese, they're a vampire? They're fucking ridiculous.
Don't eat cheese. There is wrong.
Well, that is true. I must agree. I didn't just make that up. I already have my own list going so that you know.
So back in Romania, it was common for graves to be opened 5 to 7 years after burial, just to make sure they were properly dead.
Wow.
In Bulgaria, from the Middle Ages through the beginning of the 20th century, it was normal to pin corpses through the heart with an iron stake to prevent their return as a vampire. Did you hear me? I just said the 20th century.
Wow.
That's the 1900s.
That's pretty recent.
That's like we were born.
Well, like how far into the 1900s? Because, I mean.
I don't know. But yes. And we were born in the 80s, so we were born in the 20th century. And we don't know how long Bulgaria was doing this shit for. Probably not really that
Up
long.
until the 1900s.
Yeah. They were sneaking a few pins in people's hearts,
They're like, yeah, we really shouldn't be doing this, but rather be safe than sorry. Yeah.
Never know. So during the 18th and 19th century in America, there was a widespread belief in vampires. Down in the Caribbean islands to Louisiana to even New England. There were many documented cases of families digging up loved ones to remove their hearts in a belief that the deceased was a vampire who was responsible for the sickness that was going on in the town or in the family. Although the term vampire was never actually used until later on, the deadly disease of tuberculosis had hit many areas. However, the people believed the nightly visits of their dead loved ones was the actual cause of what was going on, even though these loved dead ones, had passed away from the disease as well.
Wow.
The very famous case of Miss Mercy Brown is very well known, but a 19-year-old female was suspected of vampirism after her death when several cases of consumption occurred in her family, and there were reports of seeing Mercy after her death, after she had passed. Friends and neighbors believed the undead Mercy Brown must have been affecting the others, which included her own brother. So in an attempt to remedy this situation, her father, assisted by a family physician, removed Mercy's heart from her corpse, made a tonic with it, and gave it to her dying brother to drink to save his life. And then they burnt the rest of it. Guess what? That shit didn't work.
Yeah.
Her brother passed away. I don't know. Did her father end up passing away?
No, I thought he lived.
I'm pretty sure he didn't get sick. Yeah. I was trying to remember it myself without having to dig into it, because I've heard her story so many times. So she is considered the first American vampire.
Right.
So, like I said, they weren't using the word vampire then, but she later got that
Right.
name.
They weren't using the term tuberculosis back then either. They were using consumption,
So,
which is so weird.
Consumption. Well, it's easier to say, too. So,
yeah, it's true.
So this fear of vampire attacks continued for a long time, and even scholars and theologians wrote reports on the existence of blood-sucking undead creatures in many different parts of the world. However, at some point, physicians started pointing out all the possible causes for some of these things people claim to experience or see, and at some point, the opening of graves and desecration of these bodies became prohibited.
Yeah.
Stop that.
Right, stop that. Come on, guys. Seriously.
You know, they probably never cleaned up their mess either.
No.
They dug the shit up and then they just left it like half covered up because
they didn't care. I mean,
that's why they put a stop
that's
to
right,
this shit.
Right.
They were like, you guys are not really being nice. None of you are surgeons. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Stop it. This is rude.
It is rude.
So, science progressed and we now understand more about the diseases of those times and our current times and the way that bodies decompose.
Yes, right.
That was a large part of it.
Yay, science.
Yay! We're not stupid anymore. Many think the disease Porvaria, it's a disease. It was possibly what many of these vampires, and I do air quotes on vampires, because, like I said, they think it was just this disease, not actual vampires, were suffering from, because it caused the skin to appear discolored.
Yeah.
Sometimes like purplish, which in some of the earlier claims around the world, people were saying more so, instead of saying like very pale, they were saying that these bodies were more like zombie-like. They were purple and they were blotchy and stuff like that. And so this disease will do that to you, but it'll also cause you to just be really pale. So I assume it's at different stages of the disease that you'll be purplish and then eventually pale, or vice versa. Because it's an issue that affects the blood, so that's why you're losing all this like kind of pigment.
Damn.
It causes sensitivity to the light.
Yeah.
Just like a vampire. And when left untreated, it can cause you to go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you start to see hallucinations. There was I believe it was a French king that had this disease.
Oh.
And they called him Mad King. I mean, like, he lost his fucking mind.
That sucks, man. So basically these people were just killing these poor people who got this disease.
Yeah, so premature burial of people was a real issue too.
Yeah.
And so like they're like, that person doesn't look too well. They must be dead.
Yeah.
They bury them, they put them in the ground, or they put them in a holding spot. Next thing you know, they're wandering into town and they're like, there's a zombie on the loose. And they're yelling out crazy shit because they're losing their mind.
Oh.
You know, it's a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah, it is.
And it is explained a lot by science that we understand these days. So, like I said, much of it can be explained with the reasons why people were sick and how their bodies appeared after death. But it doesn't explain all of the sightings and experience that these people supposedly had. I mean, like the fact that they kept coming back and attacking people and people were actually dying. Were they so mad that they were actually killing people, or were they not? Was this exaggerated?
Right. It doesn't explain all of the occurrences, but it does explain some of them. And I mean, we don't know the full stories or all of the stories or all of the occurrences either. I mean, some people were probably witnessing this shit and then they had a few drinks and then went the fuck to bed. They're like, yeah, I did not just see that. That is not old Greg walking up and down this road. Nope.
Nope. Let's wash that from our memory.
Right.
But I just find it impressive, the level of fear that vampires have caused for such a long ass time.
Monsters, man. To
now be simply considered a lack of science knowledge and not almost, it is seen as a joke if you actually believe that vampires exist. Or is it a joke?
I don't know. You can ask some people in, what is it, Romania?
Exactly.
I mean,
there are people in Serbia and Romania that still hardcore believe in this shit.
Yeah.
They are terrified to go into certain places because they claim that these legends still exist. Some of the guys that I told you about that came back, this is their areas, and they are afraid to go in these areas. There was also this other vampire that like lived by a mill, and all these people that would go near the mill would like die, but I didn't include that one because it was as simple as that. They were like, there's a vampire in this mill, and every time you go near there, he's gonna eat you. And it's like, can you tell me a little bit more about him? But that, like,
Wow.
some of the foundation of the mill is still there, and people refuse to go there. Like after dark, they're fucking terrified of it. Today they're still like this. They won't go in certain woods. They still hang garlic and other kinds of forms of protection outside their doorway.
Man, it doesn't get too hot there, does it? Because that would be some stinky stuff.
The garlic.
Yeah.
So the people in Serbia and Romania, I'm so fascinated by them. I love them. I feel like I feel their pain and I'm with them. They're still scared of this shit.
Right.
As I am as well. But not to mention just the fear of people in villages that still think that vampires exist. There are also the people that self-identify as vampires. Is a collective term by which these people are known, and that's what they call themselves. They're not real in the sense that they turn into bats or that they live forever, but they do sport fangs, and just as many like to live a primarily nocturnal existence. These are just some of the cultural markers real vampires adopt to express a shared essence amongst them.
Yes.
According to them, they need blood, human or animal, or they need to feed off of psychic energy from donors, only donors, in order to feel healthy. So if they can't actually prick somebody and drink their blood off their body, then they eat meat that's really raw and stuff like that, and that's another way around it. And they said they feel sick if they do not get this blood or the psychic energy thing.
That is crazy because I've heard the term psychic vampires. I just thought that that was like a term when you're around a lot of negative people and they're sucking out all of the goodness of your life and and now everything's dark and shitty. It's because you're around these psychic vampires. I didn't realize that these people were like, yeah, we're pretty much doing that.
We own up to that is the difference between those two things. I'm totally with you on the idea, an energy vampire or whatever, someone that's like just trying to bring you down. So that's a term out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, that doesn't have to be someone that identifies as a psychic vampire. However, there are specific people, and maybe they exist around us and we don't know, they're not telling us, but there are specific people that self-identify them as a psychic vampire. They feed in various ways, many by physical touch and then also by sexual relations with donors. Some vampires can feed by astro visitation or dream walking.
No.
So I don't think this is anybody we're dealing with. I think what we're dealing with is energy vampires.
Yeah.
Like just assholes.
Oh, okay. Just assholes, straight up.
That just make you feel like shit. I don't let a lot of people touch me, let alone have sexual relations with me. So unless they're hitting me up in those astro visitations and dream walking, because I do dream a lot, I don't know these people. So I just got some people bringing me down, and those are air quote energy vampires. They're not real vampires, but they're really annoying.
Right.
Yeah. So there are many vampire organizations and sectors that have arisen since the 1970s. A few being the Temple of the Vampire, the Vampire Church, Temple UVUP.
Of Up?
I don't know what it stands for. I didn't look it up. The Red Order of Set and the Black Order of the Dragon. And that's just to name a few. There's some others that have some names that I wasn't going to struggle to say. So not all vampires belong to an organization. Many vampires, in fact, 75%, according to a survey that was conducted by Saul to go. Why do I even do this to myself? Some LLC company, that's doing surveys on vampires.
Oh.
Says 75% of them are independents, basically.
But they got that tax exemption, though.
Yeah, they do. Not all vampires share the same beliefs either. Vampires come from all walks of life, from atheist to Christian to Zen Buddhist. Basically, these people are no different than witches.
I gotta say, though, a Zen Buddhist vampire, that is, I mean, that...
Yeah, because aren't you supposed to, like, not harm
Right,
anybody?
you're, like,
And then
enlightened.
you're poking
Right.
You're either taking people's blood or you're taking their energy. So you are taking something from them. But the fact that they're not supposed to harm creatures, and then they are. But I'm assuming they see it kind of in the sense of like, if I'm taking blood from you, you're taking blood from me too. So it's an equal thing. So we're not hurting each other.
All right.
In that case, why don't we just keep our own blood? Then?
That's wild. Yeah. Zen Buddhists.
But it really reminded me of, like, if you think of how people have an idea of what witches were like in the past.
Yeah.
And then how people identify as witches today, and that they're totally different. They can be a part of covenants or not. They can be Christian or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all these different, basically anybody can be whatever they want.
Okay. I mean, I hear what you're saying. It is 2019 and you have the freedom of choice and choose to be a vampire, then that's your choice, right?
Right. But these are not vampires like we recognize vampires. These are not vampires like the vampires that I was just telling you about. I mean, that were actually eating flesh and drinking blood and waking up from the dead. These are just people that are inspired by the culture and claim to need energy from other people, whether that be through blood or physical interactions in some way, to be healthy.
They're not eating people's toenails.
Oh my God, I hope not. That's gross.
Just checking. That is gross.
Please don't do that. Now, as peaceful as these modern day real vampires sound, and as polite as they are with asking to take one's blood instead of just taking it, there has been reports of some assholes out there. There's always someone fucking up the party.
Yeah.
And giving everybody a bad name. So I saw multiple, like, small reports on they found this girl or this guy, mostly girls, unfortunately, that were attacked and somebody was trying to take their blood and drink them. But a prominent case was in Australia, a man on trial for rape. He admitted that he was a vampire and that he'd like to drink human blood by force.
Ooh.
What was presumed to be a group of people, like not just one person, it was multiple people, raided where this suspect was staying and killed him.
Oh, boy.
Making the newspaper as modern day real vampire hunters. Because where there are still people who believe in vampires, there are also still people that want to hunt vampires.
Oh, yeah.
We don't hear of real vampire hunters often in the United States, thank God. But in several countries across the globe, there have been cases of murder in relation to mistaken vampirism.
Damn.
Committed by people who believe themselves to be modern day vampire hunters. Of course, sometimes they may not actually have any proof, like the case unlike the case in Australia, where that guy admitted it. I mean, it wasn't necessarily proof, but that guy was flaunting, I'm a vampire, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So they show up at the gates and they're like, we're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
But in some other cases, they really have nothing to stand on. And they're just like, I think that's a vampire. Let's go take care of it.
Is it like red hair and blue eyes kind of situation?
Oh my God. I hope they're putting a little more effort into it than that. But
that guy's talking to himself.
Because I'm starting to think that Conan O'Brien has blue eyes.
Oh, does he?
I don't know, but
might be a vampire.
He might be a vampire. Let's accuse him of that, and then have to apologize in the next episode. In 2002, in a small village of Africa, a group of men killed a man who they believed to be a vampire. They also ended up causing destruction to a drilling site, which I'm assuming they mean an oil drilling site. I'm not really sure. They just said drilling site, but they have those in Africa. They thought the drilling site was a local vampire headquarters.
Oh, it like a cave. Like that's where all
Yeah.
the Oh, yeah. So they tore that
blew
shit
that
up. Oh my God. These people are crazy. Well, wait, was the guy really a vampire?
I don't know. I
Oh.
mean, medical science is going to cover that shit up and be like, they don't exist.
Yeah, that's true.
And in Eastern Europe, there has been a couple of cases of defilement of the dead, as a few people have believed their recently deceased loved ones to be vampires.
What?
So people are still digging up graves and trying to rectify this shit on their own. They exhume the bodies.
Oh my God.
And they're sticking wooden stakes through the heart or daggers.
No.
So how come, with the improvements of medical science, we still find this fear and this belief in vampire culture? Doesn't that leave room for people to ask themselves still to this day, do vampires really exist? So side note, and the whole reason, this is my beginning love for vampires, which I mean, like, I guess we've all heard ghouls and goblins stories and stuff and seen like tidbits of Dracula and whatnot. And I guess I don't know how old I was when the Dracula with Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves came out, but I had to have been pre-teenish.
Was it Gary Olsen that was Dracula?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know there was a dirty scene my parents wouldn't let me watch, so I had to have been pretty young.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the Dracula that I know and I love. And then later, as an adult-ish, I listened to the book, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It is one of my favoriteest books. I think I might have already said that. But before that, when I was like an 8-year-old little Wendy, I loved watching fucking Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes, I love that show.
I don't know why my parents allowed this, but...
Why? That was such a great show.
But it's nothing but murder and disappearance and ghouls and goblins or whatever. Yeah. And I watched so much fucking Unsolved Mysteries as a child into adulthood or whatever. But when I was a kid, I remember seeing an Unsolved Mysteries episode where an airplane pilot had supposedly crashed, and then when they found his body, there was 2 holes in his neck, like bite marks. Ooh. And that they were alluding at that a vampire had attacked this man in the sky, and then he crashed. And I tried so hard to find this episode of Unsolved Mysteries, because you can find some of the episodes on YouTube and whatnot. Yeah. But fuck if I could not remember anything else about the episode other than pilot, bite marks, vampire. That's all that sticks into my head. So it was so hard to find. I mean, like, do you know how many fucking Unsolved Mysteries there are?
5.
There's 5 hosts and 1,000 shows each of them.
There's 1,000 shows. Yes, there are.
It's ridiculous, and I couldn't find it. So yes, this is my little 8-year-old mind that still remembers this. I don't have full details for you, but that story was enough for me. Yeah. Because Unsolved Mysteries, you have to remember, it's a real life documented event that happened that was unexplained, that nobody has answers for. They're putting it out there almost to ask you for help, like, to get the answer.
They want someone to help figure this shit out.
It left them puzzled, and they didn't know what was going on. And I think that fear of the unknown with no answers is what leaves people to feel so unsafe. And sometimes when I think back to that episode and I don't have like a dagger to grab and go out and start vampire hunting or anything, but it scares me enough at my age still that when I think about it, I will cover my neck with my hair or a blanket at night while I'm sleeping, because I don't want any unwanted visitors that are going to feast on my blood or anything like that. So I really think it's just the idea that you feel like you're getting it from this information from a credible source, like Unsolved Mysteries. They should have done their homework, right? They wouldn't be putting this stuff out there without documentation.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But also, they don't even know what is going on. So for me, you can read fictional books, you can watch horror stories,
Yeah.
but Unsolved Mysteries is what imprinted it in my mind. Oh no, that shit's real.
Yeah.
And that's enough to, at now 36 years old, bleh, to still get scared at night and pull the covers up to my neck.
It is frightening. Unsolved Mysteries was supposed to be, it's almost like a little history lesson, crime lesson of things that are going on in the world. So when you're sitting there and little 8-year-old Wendy is watching this episode, yeah, it is terrifying because it's like, holy shit, what? This pilot was found with holes in his neck, like a vampire bit this motherfucker. You don't
Yeah.
expect that sort of thing.
What else would have done that? I mean, there's not a viper on that plane or something. You know what I mean? Like a snake.
Hold on.
So
Have you seen that movie? Snakes on a Plane? Maybe that's where that idea came from. I don't know.
Maybe.
No.
I don't know.
I mean, I do have another possibility for you. I don't know if this episode went into it or not, but could have been fucking Chupacabra. That was a blood-sucking animal, and I don't know where that plane went down, but maybe he had a stroke. Plane went down. Fucking Chupacabra's like, thank you. I was thirsty.
A meal. Yum.
Just saying.
No, when I was researching the vampire stuff, and I think we were talking about this before we even started recording or whatever. I didn't want to sound like I phoned this episode in. This is a topic that is really important to me.
Yeah.
It's just because of this Unsolved Mysteries. Just because today I still have a fear of vampires, as much as I know how silly that sounds. I'm like one of those people that are like, better to be safe than sorry.
Right.
So I could have kept going and telling you more stories and more legends and whatnot. And I ran into the Chupacabra and all these different kind of entities that kind of exhibit vampire-like activities. But I had to cut it off somewhere.
Oh, sure.
And then also it leaves you space to, if you want to revisit that.
Well, I was going to say, you allowed me to interject with one of my favorite stories of all time, which is the Chupacabra. I mean, I love monsters. I love monster stories. Vampires, like you said, I mean, they've been around for so long and they have always been a thing of fear. I mean, except for when Interview with a Vampire came around and they romanticized more, or I guess Dracula actually did that first.
Even Dracula.
Yeah. They romanticized what it would be like to have that flawless vampire skin and that long-lasting life. And all you got to do is just, bite someone's neck. And then, hey, you can have a friend forever, too, by making them your vampire friend. It's become more of a romantic view of what is actually known as a monster.
But with that said, in Salem's Lot, there's a lot of talk about odor, that they do smell like dead and decay.
Oh, yeah.
And I think in Dracula, they hit on that as well, as that he's a little funky, basically. But he had a lot of space, but he slept on dirt and kind of weird stuff. It's not as romantic as Interview with the Vampire was, for sure.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that is great. And I actually put that on my hold list.
Nice.
When I was reading something else, I was like, fuck yeah, why have I not listened to that book?
Right.
So I put Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire on hold. Maybe one day I'll revisit vampires again just after I listen to that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the people in Romania and Serbia, the shit that they still fear is what really gets me. So a lot of the other legends before in other parts of the country, you might write that up to being like, man, maybe that is a fucking demon.
Right.
Maybe that is some other Chupacabra type entity that's fucked up. Mm-hmm. But the fear that those people in Eastern Europe still have of these type of entities, mm-hmm. I'm with them.
Yeah.
I mean, you're scared of it, I'm scared.
I know, right?
Chicken shit I am.
They're scared for a reason.
Why are you so afraid? And you have to live through this. I don't think I could handle living there without wrapping my hair completely around my neck.
They're still scared because they saw that fucking episode. Maybe they know what it's called.
Oh, if they're listening, then could you please tell me? I so wanted to watch it again to see. Did I just imagine that shit being so terrifying or what? But I couldn't find it. There's so many fucking unsolved mysteries. I ended up watching a bunch of stuff about the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, I love those. Those were always I like that a lot.
Yeah, I went off in that territory.
Did you happen to find the one with Matthew McConaughey?
No, what are you talking about?
Oh yeah, he was an actor in one of the episodes for Unsolved Mysteries. I think it was one of the ones where somebody gets murdered. I don't know if he was the one that got murdered or if he was the one doing the murdering in the episode or whatever, but yeah, so maybe look up that one because it's interesting that like big name actors were in things like that when we were younger too.
Fuck yeah, I'm totally Googling that later or whatever. By the way, best Matthew McConaughey movie is Dazed and Confused.
Oh, really?
It's probably not. I mean, he's a better actor than that, but that was funny.
I love that all of that came about just because you got the book Salem's Lot.
At the very beginning, just his intro, I was like, I'm writing my next podcast on vampires. Stephen King just told me it was okay. I mean, that's the message I got. I've always been a big Dracula fan. And then now Stephen King is like, oh, you're going to start listening to my books? Don't forget about Dracula. And I was like, you're right, sir. I will write a podcast on that. And
nice.
the book itself is good. I hear the movie's not great.
Yeah.
I have yet to watch it, but I can't wait to hear more of his books, though, because I did like how he wrote.
Yeah.
It's very relatable, I guess. Is that weird to say? Like, because they're horrors, but it makes a lot of sense. It's very common tongue and realistic. But before we go, do you have anything to add on Vampire Legend?
If you've got any of your own stories, local legends, because I know our podcast goes out all over the country. So if you're from Romania or wherever and you've got your own vampire story, why don't you reach out to us? We'd love to hear it.
I would lose my shit if someone it's just, I don't think I could ever sleep again
if
they were like, it is true. But speaking of telling your own stories, we had someone, her name is Leslie. She posted on the Spirit Emporium's Instagram page after we posted the episode about the cemetery in Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
Pierce Brothers, the long ass name. What was it?
Westwood. Pierce Brothers, Westwood Memorial, lots of other words.
Part of the cemetery. All kinds of stuff. Where Marilyn Monroe is buried. She posted that I've been to this place twice. And odd things happened. There was moaning coming from a set of crypts by Marilyn Monroe's crypt.
Whoa.
It was freezing outside. When we were pulling out, the car door flew open as we passed her crypt.
What?
And no one touched it. The second time that she visited, a few months later, there was an odd guy who knew a ton about the cemetery just hanging out around the crypt.
Oh, creeper.
No one knew who he was, and none of the photographs came out with him in it. They took pictures around the crypt and then wasn't in the photo, or they were all fucked up.
Yes, that's like every story that I ever want to happen to me. Like I stopped and picked up this hitchhiker. I took her to her house. The next day I stopped over there because she left something in my car and they're like, bitch has been dead for years. I want that. And she just had that happen to her. That's great.
She just had it. She went there twice. She had 2 crazy experiences twice. Her name is Leslie A. Last name is Palleria. She put her whole name on there, so that's not
Leslie.
My fault. She doesn't want to be known. So we appreciate that you posting about that, sharing your experience with us at that cemetery. That's amazing. Awesome. And then makes me just want to go there all the more.
I love that.
So as always, if you've got a story that relates with something we're talking about or even doesn't relate with what we're talking about, we don't care. I mean, just tell us
anything.
You can comment on posts that we put out there and we'll share it on the podcast, or you can email us at creaturesofthenightparanormal.com and we'll share those stories unless you tell us not to share your name and whatnot. Please do that, because if not, we're going to tell all your business to everybody.
We can change your name.
Yeah. You can give us a totally different name. I mean, half the time we're probably going to pronounce it wrong, so we're going to rename it anyway. So if it's me telling it. So, you can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all those things that seem to be so cool. And it should be COTN_paranormal on all of those.
Well, no.
Right? The Twitter is the same,
the Twitter,
right?
no,
No,
the Twitter thing didn't work out. So it's COTN Paranormal.
whatever.
Yeah.
Close enough. Just put it in COTN and
It does. That's right. If you put in COTN.
Nobody else should be using that shit.
Yes, that is right. But unfortunately, that does happen. So yeah, but it's COTN.
People from other countries jack your site. Yeah.
Yes, that has happened recently.
Maybe they have a really cool paranormal podcast.
They took my name. Now they're going to take our ideas and all of that.
Maybe that's all they're doing is translating our podcast.
By all means, do it, man. Works for me.
And then, go to our Etsy shop, which is the Spirit Emporium, or you can go to our website, creaturesofthenight.paranormal.com. Sorry, it's so long. And you can find swag, basically. We've got t-shirts now because we're that fucking cool. Actually, we just wanted to make t-shirts for ourselves, but we thought we'd share it with you. And the end. That's all I got for you. Look, vampires, I'm a year older. I don't want to be. That's it. That's all I got.
Right on, man. That's it. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.